and you only move the headstone!
In the movie Poltergeist, the family finds out that their new dream home is built on an old cemetery, and that the restless spirits of the bodies resting underneath the foundation aren't big fans of sharing. Crazy story, right? Could never happen in real life, right? Sure it could, and it did. Nearly the exact same thing happened in a neighborhood in Texas as recently as the early 80s. But the real story is a lot more terrifying than anything crafted by Hollywood. It's the early 1980s. The economy is booming. Suburban development is sprouting up everywhere. And for many Americans, the dream of home ownership is finally within reach. In a pristine neighborhood called Newport near Crosby, Texas, Sam and Judith Haney have just purchased their dream home. Beautiful house with a spacious backyard where they plan to install a swimming pool and create memories for years to come. But dreams have a way of unraveling, sometimes thread by thread, sometimes all at once. For the Haneys, it began with a knock on the door. One afternoon, an old man stood on their doorstep. There's something in his eyes, a heaviness, a knowledge that seemed to weigh on him. He had noticed they were installing a swimming pool, he explained. And there was something about their backyard that they needed to know. Sam followed him out back, confused but curious. The old man stopped, pointed to a specific patch on the ground, and said words that would change everything. There are graves right there. Imagine standing in your backyard, a place where you barbecue on the weekends, and being told that beneath your feet lie human remains. Would you believe it? Or would you dismiss it as the ramblings of a confused old man? Sam Haney couldn't simply ignore the claim. He had to know. He rented a backhoe and he began to dig where the man had pointed. The metal teeth of the machine cut through the earth until they struck something solid, something that wasn't rock or root. Sam stopped the backhoe, jumped down in the pit, and continued carefully digging by hand. What he uncovered sent chills down his spine. Wooden pine boards, and beneath them, the unmistakable outline of human remains. Just beneath the surface of their perfect suburban backyard, there was a coffin. The sheriff and the county coroner were called to the scene. They conducted an official exhumation and confirmed Sam's discovery. Most of the bones had deteriorated to powder, but 25 fragments remained so brittle they crumbled at the touch. A second undisturbed coffin lay nearby. When carefully opened, it revealed even more skeletal remains, and on one frail finger there were 2 wedding rings still clinging to bone. Judith Haney later described holding these rings in her hands, feeling the weight of them, both physical and metaphorical. It was sickening, she said, to think that I had desecrated someone's grave. But whose graves were these? The Haneys' search for answers led them to Jasper Norton, a longtime resident who had actually dug many of the graves in the area years ago. What he told them was astounding. Their home and about a dozen others had been built directly on top of a cemetery that was called Black Hope. This was no ordinary cemetery. It was the final resting place for former slaves and their descendants. As many as 60 people had been buried there in paupers' graves, with the last burial taking place in 1939. The remains in the Haney's yard belonged to Betty and Charlie Thomas, who had died in the 1930s. Their graves, like the others, had been forgotten, or worse, deliberately ignored when developers transformed the land decades later. The Haneys faced a moral dilemma now. What do you do when you discover your dream home is someone else's eternal resting place? They made what felt like the only right decision. They reburied Betty and Charlie in their yard with respect and held a small ceremony, hoping to put these spirits at ease. But peace wasn't going to happen. Now imagine you're lying in your bed late at night. The house is quiet except for the gentle hum of the air conditioner. Suddenly, a clock on your bedside table begins to spark and emits a strange blue glow. You reach over quickly to unplug it, only to discover it's already unplugged. This is exactly what Judith Haney experienced one night, the first of many unexplainable events. On another evening, Sam was working the late shift, leaving Judith home alone. As she lay in her bed, she heard the sliding glass door open, followed by what sounded like Sam's voice saying, "Hey, what are you doing?" She got up to check, heart pounding, only to find the doors still locked and the house still empty. The next morning, she couldn't find her red shoes anywhere. She searched every closet, every corner. It wasn't until her and Sam walked outside that they saw them, placed side by side directly on top of the gravesite. Even more chilling, this happened on Betty Thomas's birthday. It was like Charlie was giving Betty a birthday present, Sam later reflected, his voice tinged with awe and terror. You might be thinking this sounds like the plot of a horror movie, and you wouldn't be wrong. But for the Haneys and their neighbors, this was a reality. The Williams family, who lived nearby, were experiencing their own nightmare. Gene Williams described a foreboding feeling that pervaded their home. From the moment they moved in, plants withered and died despite their best efforts. Coffin-shaped sinkholes appeared in their yard. Fill them in one day, they'd be back the next, as if the earth itself was trying to reveal what lay beneath. Their granddaughter Carly spoke of walking through bone-chilling pockets of ice-cold air in the middle of the scorching Texas summer days. Toilets had flushed by themselves. As the water spiraled down, she could hear what sounded like murmuring voices, conversations just beyond comprehension. Throughout the house, there was a constant sensation of being watched, of not being alone. It was enough to terrify her about being in the house by herself. The incidents escalated. Ben Williams returned home from a midnight shift one night, opened the refrigerator door, and saw two ghostly figures standing there in the kitchen. They moved through the den and headed down the hallway towards the bedroom where his wife Jean was sleeping. They ain't messing with my wife, he thought, and dove through one of the apparitions. He described the sensation as a sticky cold feeling that passed through his entire body. Living in constant fear takes its toll. Judith Haney found herself crying constantly, afraid to perform even the most routine tasks in her own home. The Haneys decided to fight back the American way. Through the courts, they sued the builder for failing to disclose that their home was built on a cemetery. Initially, justice seemed possible when a jury awarded them $142,000 for mental anguish, but their relief was short-lived. The verdict was reversed on legal grounds, with the court ruling the developers weren't liable. To add insult to injuries, the Haneys were ordered to pay $50,000 in court costs. We ended up losing the case, losing the money, even losing the house, Sam later said. They were forced to declare bankruptcy, to abandon their home. The Williams family sought legal help too. They were told that without definitive proof of a cemetery on their property, nothing could be done. Can you imagine their frustration, their fear, their desperation? Jean Williams reached her breaking point. That was the last straw, she said. You want a body? I'll show you a body. She began to dig in her yard, convinced she would find human remains that would validate their claims, their experiences, their suffering. But this decision led to the greatest tragedy of all. Shortly after she began digging, Jean fell ill. Her adult daughter, Tina, volunteered to continue the work. After digging for just a half hour, Tina also began to feel strange. She complained of dizziness and laid down on the couch. Her condition rapidly deteriorated as she waited for paramedics to arrive. Jean watched helplessly as her daughter's eyes began to glaze over. I was talking to her, trying to talk her out of dying, Jean recalled. Please, Tina, talk to me. But Tina had suffered a massive heart attack. 2 days later, at just 30 years old, she died. The weight of guilt crushed Jean. In her mind, there was a direct connection between disturbing another grave and her daughter's death. We have to get out of here, she told Ben. It doesn't matter what we lose. If we don't, I'm not going to make it. My fight is gone. The Williams family fled to Montana before eventually returning to Texas, but to a different house in a different neighborhood. Today, they're a growing family, no longer plagued by the phenomena that once terrorized them. And what about their old neighborhood? Well, interestingly, none of the current residents report any paranormal activity. The streets are quiet, the lawns are manicured, life goes on as normal, at least on the surface. So what really happened in Crosby, Texas in the 1980s? Was it just mass hysteria triggered by the discovery of forgotten graves? Or was it a genuinely supernatural phenomena caused by disturbed spirits? Or was it just a series of tragic coincidences? What we do know for sure is that Black Hope Cemetery did exist. It was a burial ground for former slaves and their descendants, part of one of Texas's many freedom colonies, established after the Civil War. And we do know that development did proceed over the sacred ground without any proper relocation of the remains interred there. Maybe the most powerful lesson from the Black Hope curse isn't about whether or not ghosts exist, but how the past refuses to stay buried. History doesn't just disappear when we build over it. The stories of those who came before us, their lives, their struggles, their final resting places, they demand respect and remembrance. The Newport subdivision exists to this day in Crosby, Texas. It looks like any other affluent American suburb. Peaceful, prosperous, picture perfect. But beneath the surface lies a story of forgotten graves, disturbed spirits, and the families caught between worlds. Thanks for joining me on this journey into one of America's most chilling mysteries. If you've enjoyed this deep dive, hit the subscribe button and the notification bell so you don't miss out on our next exploration of the strange and unsettling stories from our past. Maybe, just maybe, take a minute to research what your own home was built on. Until next time, sleep tight if you can. See ya.